The One Big Beautiful Bill, a proposed budget reconciliation measure, is expected to significantly impact Medicaid recipients in Louisiana. Experts say portions of the bill, like increased work requirements, could result in people losing coverage and increased costs for Medicaid recipients. It will also phase out federal subsidies that help people afford insurance under the Affordable Care Act, all of which could jeopardize Louisianans' access to health care. Now, this came as a major shock to many Louisiana residents and some political leaders. Medicaid serves as a lifeline for nearly half of the state's population, leading to fears about losing coverage.
It frightens people, and we don't want to feel that way. And I don't want my constituents to be frightened of what the government is doing. I want us to present it in a much better way. And look, and even for me, I was like, oh my gosh, I got to call my congressional leader. I can't believe they're doing this. But look, once I started having those conversations with our congressional delegation, whether it was Mike Johnson or Bill Cassidy or John Kennedy, once I started having those conversations, I started feeling a little bit better. But I still think that we got time to work through some of this.
State Representative Jack McFarland, who represents parts of northern Louisiana, expressed his initial concern that the bill could affect Louisiana's 49 rural hospitals. Because the changes are phased in over the next 5 years, he's hopeful they can minimize some of the worst-case scenarios facing Louisiana. Jeff Reynolds from the Rural Hospital Coalition of Louisiana shares his optimism.
There's one positive and there's some negatives, but the negatives tend to be closer to 2030 than right now. The biggest, the earliest impact would be the spring of 2027. You'll start seeing work requirements and 6-month eligibility redetermination for the expansion population. Right now in Louisiana, we have about 500,000 citizens within the Medicaid expansion program. Of that, they'll have to start redetermining eligibility every 6 months in that group, and then also work requirements. And both of those requirements start in the spring of 2027, but that would be the earliest impact. The next impact really is payments to the supplemental payments to the hospitals, both the 49 rural hospitals that I represent, but also all the hospitals across the state. In state fiscal year 2029, we will start seeing a 10% reduction in our supplemental payments. That will continue each year out to 2035, but that does give us 4 years roughly to work with both our federal delegation and our state delegation to figure out how we're going to fix that and how we're going to change that and potentially address that reduction that's forthcoming in state fiscal year 2029.
Senator Bill Cassidy, a medical doctor with experience in Louisiana's hospital systems, argues these changes should be viewed as Medicaid reform rather than cuts and could potentially benefit the state.
I wouldn't first characterize them as Medicaid cuts. You can call them reforms. First, we create a $50 billion fund to help support rural hospitals, knowing that rural hospitals have had problems. Secondly, we put in work requirements. We say that if somebody's on Medicaid, and obviously they make less money than other people do, we ask that they either work, volunteer, or go to school at least 20 hours a week. Now, folks are calling that kicking people off of Medicaid. No, you're asking someone to at least work, volunteer, or go to school 20 hours a week. I'm a physician who worked in the Louisiana Charity Hospital system for over 2 decades. I can tell you, somebody sitting home on a couch doing nothing, it's terrible for their health. Statistically, they're going to do worse.
He states that the state's high Medicaid spending led Congress to include Medicaid reform in the bill, which supporters say is aimed at eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse.
So the amount of money being spent on Medicaid over the last 4 years has just exploded. Now, our country clearly has a problem with our debt and deficit. And if you look at the amount of money going to Medicaid, it was just going like that. And it's pretty clear that's because states had figured out how to get you and I, the federal taxpayer, to pay more of the state's burden.
Jeff Reynolds aims to find a balanced approach that streamlines spending and provides as many people with access to health care as possible, while keeping rural hospitals open to serve their communities.
There are reforms. It depends on how you look at it. One side looks at it as, oh, these are reforms to make sure only the eligible people are in the program. Other side would look at it and say, no, you're just increasing the administrative hurdles and with the end goal of getting more people off the rolls. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. It is, Medicaid eligibility is very much an art form, not a science.